I call Lynne Pillay.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Last November, John Key celebrated a year as Prime Minister. But survivors of sexual abuse and disabled people in New Zealand, or New Zealand as we say here, have nothing to celebrate. John Key promised a brighter future for all New Zealanders, but survivors of sexual abuse and disabled people in New Zealand do not have a brighter future. In his speech in this House, John Key promised improved opportunity, fairness and security for all New Zealanders. But that is not the case for survivors of sexual abuse or for disabled people. John Key promised in New Zealand that his government would provide or improve the opportunities available to our most vulnerable citizens. Mr Speaker, that is clearly not the case. There is absolutely nothing in the Prime Minister's statement that could give any hope whatsoever to New Zealanders. No innovation, no support for the vast majority of Kiwis. National has failed New Zealand families. The rise in GST, and let's look at that, that will push more costs onto hard-working New Zealanders and who are already struggling, Mr Speaker, to make ends meet. Will the tax cut deliver more to low and middle income earners? No, they will not. Will they deliver more to the 10% of high income earners in this country? Yes. How much? Let's look at how much. Now, the Prime Minister will get another $509 a week. Now that, Mr Speaker, is around the minimum weekly wage in this country. So what we're looking at, so those cleaners, Mr Speaker, who rallied outside Parliament today, we in Labour went and met them, the Green Party went and met them. Did National go and meet them? Did the Maori Party go? Did ACT go? No, they did not. But if they'd have listened to them, all they were asking for was a small increase so they could make a living. But they weren't listened to by a national government. And I say again, currently their weekly wage is almost exactly the amount of additional money that John Key would get under his government tax cuts. And those same cleaners will also suffer a 20% increase in their GST just to look after their families, to feed and clothe their kids. Where is the justice in this? This is under the line that John Key took from us, opportunities for all for a brighter future. Yeah, right. Labour will fight alongside every community group, every family, the majority of all New Zealanders, to fight, the many not the few, to fight this GST rise. Because that is what we are about, as my colleague Darren Hughes said, the many not the few. Mr Speaker, yesterday there was another rally in Parliament. This is the rally season. And this was about the protests at the huge hikes in the ACC levy, the cutting of all the entitlements, and quite clearly the lining up of ACC for privatisation in the future. Congratulations to everyone that turned up, and what a wide range of people were there. There was the biking community, all there in their leather gear. There was the people who were getting dealt to. They looked really good, who were getting dealt to under the ACC system. The victims of injury, or who had been referred to by ACC, the draining the swamp. Those were the people that turned out. But I want to talk about who wasn't there. National wasn't there again to listen to that group. But I want to talk about another group, the victims of sexual abuse and the professionals who support them, who provide counselling, who turned up at that rally. Those victims and survivors have suffered the most horrendous forms of abuse, the most horrendous forms that you could ever contemplate. This government introduced a new pathway for dealing with those claimants. Well, that pathway was nothing short of a high wire. And what we are seeing now in the last figures, 70% of those claims turned down in a 6-month period. Victims are being pushed from pillar to post. They are forced to tell and retell their stories to apply for the help they need and deserve. The system is so shocking that many councillors have felt compelled to not even participate now on ethical grounds. And some reasons that ACC has declined treatment, let's hear them. Deciding that sex with a 12-year-old was consensual. Childhood rape was sexualised play. And 2 young boys who were raped and thrown out of a window, they didn't need counselling. That's their new policy. That's Nick Smith. Mr. Speaker, this is without a doubt one of the most cruel and shameful cost-cutting exercises we have ever seen in our country. Well, I've got a message for the national government, and it is this. Victims, survivors of sexual abuse, counsellors, therapists, organisations, and this side of the House, we will not go away. Not in 6 months, not in a year, not ever, until this government accepts that what they are doing is absolutely wrong and reverses the cuts to ACC. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is another group who have been seriously dealt to, Mr. Speaker, and that's people living with disabilities. The cuts in this area have been nothing short of mind-blowing. Starting with, from Paula Bennett, the cutting of the training incentive allowance. It's not only about single parents, it also supports disabled students in tertiary training. Gone. Also, the cutting of community education. I predicted, as did my colleagues quite rightly, that would lead to the axing of sign language classes. Anne Tolley said, no, not true. Notice Anne Tolley isn't saying a word now. Notice she's not heavily involved sorting through her papers, but Anne Tolley stood in this House and said that wasn't true. And now we are seeing the axing of those classes. And I'll tell you, Anne Tolley, it is shameful. No wonder you're looking embarrassed. And also the sacking of support and teachers for deaf children and their families. Again, Anne Tolley, hang your head in shame on that one. The cutting of support for tertiary students in the Auckland region. Again, Anne Tolley, hang your head in shame. No wonder they dumped you from the portfolio. And I'm saying to you, Mr. Joyce, it's your time now to fix it. And also, we're looking at the extraordinary organisations that help children with disabilities. Is Anne Tolley moved to tears, or was I imagining that? Imagining it, okay. But also the funding of other organisations who help disabled students and support them to reach their full potential. The cuts in that area is absolutely shocking stuff. This is a role of absolute shame for this government. And it's been a few short months and we have seen all the support slashed from a Prime Minister who cares for our vulnerable people. Well, the Prime Minister today said sometimes we get it wrong. He said in this House and said sometimes we get it wrong. On that, Mr. Speaker, I agree. And he stated that he wanted to improve opportunity, fairness and security. To do that, his statement should have said other things. It should have said, we'll stop the ACC attacks and return to a fair system. It should have said, we'll shelve the GST hikes and stop giving huge cuts to the high-income earners. We'll reinstate the cuts to disability organisations. I can see Mr. Joyce looking at that and thinking it's not a bad idea. We'll reinstate workers' 2% employer contributions to KiwiSaver that we actually snatched away from them. We'll reinstate the funding for community education. We'll make sure our cleaners in Parliament who clean our offices get a fair wage rise. We actually think, John Key actually said, I actually think that my proposed tax cut, where I get more money than those cleaners who clean our office, is unfair, then he would get some positive words from this side of the House. Will that government do it? No, they won't. Will they front up to those injustices? No, they won't. And will they stop wrecking our education system with their national standards and commit? Mr. Joyce, you're going to have to build a heap more roads with your new education statement today, because people are going to be whirling all over Auckland City, taking their kids to the school of their choice. Mr. Speaker, I think I'll finish now, but what I will say is it's an absolute travesty and an absolute insult to ordinary New Zealanders.
Very good.